Reddit user drawbig1774 wants to use a port other than 443 to access the graphical user interface of the Palo Alto firewall. I'm going to show you how to do this, why maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense, but why actually by switching from the dedicated management interface to a dataplane interface, you actually do get a lot of benefits, and there can be good reasons to do that, even if I still recommend using 443 as the port to access the graphical user interface. I'm going to walk through how to do that, and I'm going to actually switch my home firewall from management through the dedicated management interface to a dataplane interface. Keep watching to see how I do this. As I mentioned, there's no way to access the management interface if you're using the dedicated management port from a different port other than 443 if you're accessing the graphical user interface. However, you can do this if you're using a dataplane interface for management. While I'm not for actually accessing it via a different port, there are other benefits to As I mentioned, you're not able to access the management interface if you're using the direct management port that's on the Palo Alto firewall from a port other than a logical port other than 443. You have to access it directly with 443. However, if you want to manage your firewall from one of the dataplane ports, the physical ports that are on there, then yes, you can change the port from 443 to something else, such as 88443. And while I'm not really for accessing it via different ports, I know that the Reddit questioner said that they have to do it for compliance reasons. I think that's a little silly. However, I do think that there are other benefits for using the dataplane port, and I'm going to show you what some of those are, and I'm actually going to set up on my firewall to manage it from the dataplane port. And going forward, I'm actually going to manage everything from a data port because I like the additional visibility and protection that gives me. So let's get started. Let me open up my PA440. And you can see here in the dashboard that my current management IP address is 192.168.2.5. So let me open up a PowerShell and ping 192.168.2.5 a few times. And now if I go to the monitor tab to see if I can find that ping, you see I already have the filter here. So if I try to find that ping, it doesn't come up, and it's not a live session either. If I go to the session browser and I do 192.168.2.5, nothing comes up. So there's no live sessions there, and there's no traffic log. So you're not actually able to see any of the traffic going to the management interface in the monitor tab here, unless you're using one of your dataplane ports as a management interface. You might want to be careful of doing this if your firewall's overwhelmed already. In my personal case, I'm using this for at home, and I've got about a 300 meg connection. This is a PA440, which supports a couple gigs, so I'm not really worried about it. And you can see here, management CPU is 8%, dataplane CPU is 0%. There's only 300 sessions out of a supported, is that 100, 200,000, I think? It's hard for me to count the number of nines there. Yeah, it looks like that's 200,000. So it supports about 200,000 sessions, and there's only 300. So there's plenty of space here for me to add some additional traffic, which I'm going to do on the management, on one of the dataplane ports. So let's get started. The first thing that you're going to need to do if you want to manage your firewall from one of the dataplane ports is to go to the network tab and create a interface management profile. Interface management profile is what's actually required to manage well, it's basically a profile that you apply to your data plane interfaces, and it can give you some networking capabilities such as ping. So you see on my interface I have ping only so that those interfaces are pingable, but it also allows you to use those interfaces for management. So I'm going to create one that still allows ping, but it also is going to allow management via HTTPS and SSH because I do use SSH. And then I'll call this, I'll just make it simple, I'll just call this HTTPS SSH ping. And I'm only going to allow from my internal wireless network just to add a little bit of security with basically an access control list here. I'll hit OK. And now I can apply this interface management profile to a interface. But before I do that, let me create a zone and a router for that interface. Zone, I'll create a zone, I'll just call it management. I do want to have user identification enabled, and I'm good with that. And then I need to create a router. If I have advanced routing set up, so now it's called a logical router. If you don't have advanced routing set up, this will probably be called a virtual router in your firewall. Let me call this management. Okay, we'll have to come back and add the route here. We'll start by this. We'll just call this the management router. Then now I'll configure the interface that I have a router and a zone to apply it to. So I'm going to make this a layer 3 interface. I'm going to use that management router and that management zone. The zone not hold. I thought I created a zone. Oh, created as a tap. My mistake. Hopefully you guys learn from my mistakes as much as I do. Alright, okay. Okay, and I will go back to the interface. And then now I can add that zone of management. Now you see it pop up. Alright, I'm actually using DHCP, and I'm actually using DHCP with the firewall, so I'm going to reserve a specific IP address in DHCP. You'll see me do that in a second. And I do want to send the host name. The current host name I have is just home tac fw, but to make this a little bit different, I'll call it mgmt, just so that I can differentiate between the two. And in advanced, that's where I'm actually going to apply that management profile right here. So under advanced, you see here management profile, and then that's where I will pick that HTTPS SSH ping. Okay, gives you a warning, says please don't do this, blah, blah, blah. And mine is still on the internal part of my network. All right. Now that I have done that, I need to, before I log in with SSH, what I need to do is I need to actually commit this configuration, and then I can get the MAC address of this port. I notice that it's not until you set up the port and commit the configuration that you will get a MAC address. So first I need to commit this. I'm going to commit now. Commit. And because I am nice, I have lately been not making you guys wait for the commit, even though I have to. So I'm gonna wait for the commit, but you get to skip it. Let's go. All right, the configuration commit has completed. So I will close this, and then now we should be able to get the MAC address of Ethernet 1/8. So all we have to do is log in. My management plane is a little slow today. All right, so we'll just do show interface Ethernet 1.8. I couldn't find a way to do this with the graphical user interface. I had to use the command line to get this. You see here the port and MAC address is this. Oh, come on. There we go. So copy that. Move this out, and then I will go to my DHCP server. I won't show you my allocation, so you're just gonna have to believe me when I tell you that the allocation doesn't have anything that is over is over 100. Doesn't have any numbers over 100. I just looked at it before starting to record, and there was no assigned IP over 100. When I reserve IPs, I try to make sure that whatever IP I'm reserving isn't currently being used. Just to, I don't have to kick anybody out. But I will add a reservation here for 192.168.2.101, since again there was nothing over 100. I'll add that MAC address, and then this will be my firewall management interface management. I'll call this dataplane because I think I already have a reservation for the other management interface. All right, so now I know that it's going to be 2.101. That'll be really important in the next steps. One thing I did forget to do earlier, again, hopefully you guys are learning from my mistakes. I made the logical router, but I didn't actually add the route. So let me add a static route here so that it routes outwards. This will be important as well. So I need to call this all, just call this everywhere. So anywhere that it goes, I just want it to go out of 1.8, and then I just want it to, I actually, funnily enough, I want it to go to the wireless gateway, because that will be within the, that'll be in the wireless network. That's how I have it currently set up, in the same wireless subnet. I could separate it off into its own subnet, but I haven't done that yet. Right now it's all one subnet. Okay. All right, so I have that set up now. I need to set up, let me set up an object. So now that I made it 101, let's create an object here, address object. Yeah, I think I already have a firewall management object, as you can see here. So we can clone that, and we can just call this dataplane. And we'll change the address from 5 to 101. Hit OK. And I can use that in my policies. Oh, now I will create, first create a security policy allowing access from that interface to from that interface, or allowing access to that interface. So let's say firewall management. Not any, so we'll do, this will be coming from management. So remember, zones are tied to ports, and so if it's coming into that port, it's going to seem like it's management to management. So even though it's within kind of the wireless subnet, it's actually going to be in the management zone in this case. This will be the wireless subnet. Perfect. I'm not using user ID or device ID yet. However, I plan to add that functionality later. This will be in the management zone. This is an intrazone, and the destination address will just be for that firewall management data plane, as I mentioned. I don't want to allow any application. I actually want to allow PanOS web interface as well as web browsing. Come on, there we go, and SSL. Oh, come on. Cool. And then the service URL category, if you remember, I'm going to, just to show you, I'm going to make the port 8443. In this particular case, the security policy is applied on pre-NAT IP and also pre-NAT port or service, as it's called in the Palo Alto ecosystem. And so if I'm going to 8443, even if I'm going to do a port forwarding, it's going to look at the first port, the port that it is before translation. So here I need to actually add that 8443 since I'll be accessing it. So let's set up a new service. This 8443. We'll call this firewall management. What do we want to call it? Like non-standard. All right, and it'll be destination port 8443. Perfect. Cool, and that'll be the service URL category. Action allow. I'm going to do my standard log forwarding, and then the profile setting. So this is really important actually. Last year there were a few vulnerabilities against the firewall management interface. And so by applying a security profile here, what I'm doing is I'm actually protecting that interface with a protecting the interface using the Palo Alto Network's intrusion prevention system to block any attempts to exploit one of those vulnerabilities. And this is something that you're only going to get by managing the firewall through the data plane. Actually, if you can't apply this type of protection through the, at least not directly onto the management port. You can try to route it through the firewall and get back into there. And some people might say, well, you know, if an attacker is trying to exploit my management port, that management port would have to be publicly exposed. And that's kind of true, but if you're really trying to apply a zero trust mindset, then you're not just worried about, oh, is it publicly exposed or not. You're trying to protect everything regardless of location, which is a zero trust principle. So we're protecting the access to the firewall regardless of the fact that it's not publicly exposed. So this is really like more of a zero trust mindset that I'm applying here. So we'll allow that firewall management. And then I also want to allow, outbound. So I want to allow the firewall to management interface to reach out to updates. And so I'm going to add another one called Palo update. And this will actually be on the wireless side because this will be going through the wireless interface, but this will still be the firewall management data plane. And if you're confused about how this is wireless and management, I get it. It is a little bit confusing. It'll be any destination address on the internet. I'm just going to allow it outbound to anywhere. I probably should lock down the specific update applications and things like that, but that's another video in URLs. I will just make it application default, and then I will also keep the strict profile. So at least there's some protection through the application default, so there'll be no app tunneling through a port, and then there's the intrusion prevention system capability of the threat prevention service applied here. If you want to really, really lock this down, what you should do is there's a list of applications that are needed for updates, and so you should list those applications here and lock it down, and then also the URLs. So that's something that I can make another video on. I will definitely do. So we got the Palo update and the firewall management. So those are going to be the two policies that are needed to make sure this is accessible. And now I will go to NAT to do that NAT forwarding from 8443 to 443. So let's create a NAT rule. Name, let's call this firewall management. And just so you know, I'm going to actually get rid of this 8443 to 443 thing. I do want to continue to manage on the data plane port because I like the visibility that I'll be able to see the access in the monitor tab, and I also like the protection that I'm getting, but there's no real value in doing the 8443 thing. I'm just more showing how it could be done. All right, so we're doing this. So again, this will be from management to management, and then This will just be for the 1.8 interface. This will be just for that non-standard. So it's going to, so if it's going from management to management, it's going to 8443 with the destination address of that firewall management data plane. From any, wouldn't really be any source address. We would want this just to be for the wireless subnet, so the IPs in my local area network here. Then the translation, we'll just do a static IP translation. We're going to keep the same IP, so it'll just map to the same IP, but it's going to translate the port. So we're going to translate the port to 443. And you don't need to make this bidirectional because this is stateful, so it will maintain the state. It'll continue to translate back and forth as long as it's within the same session. All right, and then that's down here. I don't think that will, yeah, since it's different zones, it's not going to conflict with any other ones. So we can just keep it there at the bottom. This should work. So if we see my network interfaces here, see this one is red. So now I'm going to commit this. And while it's committing, actually, we're going to go into my laundry room, which is where I have my, firewall, and we'll go in there and we'll actually move the port. So the reason I picked 1.8 is because that's the closest port to the dedicated management port. So we'll go there and we'll actually move it, and then you'll see how we can access the firewall from the new IP, the .101 IP, and yeah. And it'll be on the new interface, and we'll see some cool stuff. So let's commit this. All right, and let's head over to my laundry room. Welcome to my laundry room, where I keep my Palo firewall. Inside here is my wireless router and modem, and then I have it kind of jerry-rigged, as you can see, to connect here to the actual firewall. I don't know if you can see that, but this is the dedicated management cable right here. This is connected to that dedicated management port. So all I need to do is to just move this from here to 8, which is, it's kind of hard to see, but it's down there. So I'm just gonna, just watch me move this. All right, here, come on. All right, over to 8. Cool, that is in 8. And there you can see it's starting to flash. So now it is connected. All I had to do was just move the same cable. And then now the DHCP server will, based on that MAC address, will give it the IP address of 101. So let's go back to the computer, and I will log in with the new interface. All right, I am back, and as you can see, because we unplugged the management interface from the network, we no longer are able to reach the management interface. So I'm going to now access the firewall from the new IP, which is, if you remember, HTTPS:// 192.168.2.101:8443. Now when I access this, it'll NAT me to the 443 on the interface, and then I'll be able to access that. All right, and then now I can show you something interesting. So I guess first we can look at the network configuration. So if we go to the interfaces, all right, now you can see that the link state of Ethernet 1.8 is up, so that is working, and that's where we're accessing it from. Another interesting thing is now, so now if I pull back up PowerShell, again, if we ping 192.168.2.5, those pings will not work because it's unplugged from the network. Yeah, host unreachable. But if we ping 192.168.2.101, we're getting a reply. And if we go to monitor, we change this to 101, you'll see now we can see, no, we also see NetBIOS, but we can see the SSL, the 8443. The specific application I want to see is ping. So there we go. So we're getting the, so you see me, my desktop, pinging the firewall management on the data plane. Perfect. So now I want to show you one more thing that you need to know when setting this up. That is if I go to device and then if I go down to licenses and I try to retrieve license keys from license server, you're going to get an error. So if you try to do this, if you try to download software, try to do dynamic updates, it's either you're going to get an error or it's just going to take forever and time out. And so if you do this, basically the reason that this is happening is because by default the Palo Alto firewall does all these services from the management interface, and since that interface is now down, it can't actually access anything. So right now it's trying to retrieve the license from the Palo Alto Networks license server using that dedicated management interface, but as I mentioned, that dedicated management interface is not plugged into anything. So it's it looks like it's just going to keep trying and it's going to time out here. But this is one of the things that you need to be cognizant of when you set this up. You need to set up what's called a service route. So so you say fail to get license info. So we're going to get these types of errors. And we have to set up a service route. The way we do that is we go up to setup, and then we go to services and service route configuration. And then we're going to actually customize here. And we will need to, for all of these, we will need to, instead of defaults, go with one that is accessible to the internet. I'll just do 1.1 since that's accessible to the internet. So now it'll just reach out with that service route in order to access it. So 1.1, and this is super fun. It would be nice if there was an easy way that we could just wouldn't it be nice if there was just an easy way that we could just do all of these? Cool. So yeah, I did that one already. You get the picture. I'll configure all of these later, but basically you just need to go down and configure all those. I don't want to bore you with that. I think you get the picture of what needs to be done there. And so that's what I'll have to do to fix that particular thing. So I have now shown you that I can access the management interface through a dataplane interface. This allows you to use a different port. So in this particular case, 8443 I'm accessing the interface with, and so I can use a non-standard port, and this is a way to do it. I do still have an interzone rule that's allowing me to access. So actually if I went to 443 right now, I could do that. I would have to actually block the 443 access, or block it or get rid of that intrazone. I apologize, intrazone allow rule, in order to not be able to access it with 443. But honestly, I'm just going to get rid of this. I'm going to just access it with 443. But I will keep managing it through the dataplane interface because I like the ability that the idea that I can monitor it, as well as I can apply those protections through the threat prevention service. So I think there are some benefits to using a dataplane interface, and there's just some things you gotta watch out for is make sure that your security policies are allowing it, and then also make sure that you set up service routes if you're actually going to unplug your management interface altogether. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. If you think that there's any value in doing a data plane interface, if you think that it's just a waste of time, you should just use the dedicated management interface. I'm open to feedback and suggestions or different opinions. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please, if you enjoyed the video, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll be putting out a lot more content about all the new Palo Alto Network certifications and continue to answer people's questions on Reddit like this. So again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.